The massive view screen aboard the Voidhammer displayed the tactical readouts in harsh, blue-tinted holograms that cast an eerie glow across Governor Zaltervrax's scaled features. His elongated fingers, tipped with polished chitin, tapped rhythmically against the command console as he studied the 5 human outposts scattered throughout the Serpentis Nebula. Each installation pulsed with a soft red light on the map. Mining operations, research stations, nothing of true military significance. That was precisely why they had been chosen. Tactical assessment complete, Governor, announced the weapons officer, a younger Cthar whose ceremonial scars had barely healed. Minimal defenses detected at all targets. Standard civilian-grade shields, token point defense systems. No military vessels within immediate response range. Vrax nodded, the ridge of armored plates along his skull catching the light. Excellent. The message must be clear, but measured. We are not barbarians, after all. A ripple of appreciative clicks and hisses, the Cthar equivalent of chuckling, spread through the command bridge. We are simply maintaining order, as we have for 12 millennia. The Cthar Empire had indeed maintained order across their corner of the galaxy for over 12,000 years. Their technological advancement had plateaued centuries ago, but it hardly mattered. They remained vastly superior to most species they encountered. Their society was built on immutable hierarchies, strict codes of conduct, and an unshakable belief in their manifest destiny to rule. Newer races were tolerated if they kept to their place. Humanity, unfortunately, seemed incapable of understanding its place. The humans continued to expand into our rightful buffer zones, Vrax continued, addressing his senior staff. Their diplomatic channels flood us with meaningless chatter about peaceful coexistence and mutual prosperity, yet their actions betray their true nature. Chaotic, unpredictable, dangerously ambitious. He gestured to a secondary display showing the growth of human settlements over the past century. They breed like vermin and spread just as quickly. Commander Ryla, his chief strategic analyst, stepped forward. Unlike most Cthar military officers, her movements were fluid, almost graceful, lacking the typical rigidity of their species. Governor, if I may offer an observation? Vrax gestured permission with a flick of his wrist. The rate of human technological adaptation over the past century is concerning. While their current capabilities remain inferior to ours, the acceleration curve suggests. It suggests nothing, Vrax interrupted. We've seen this pattern with dozens of species. Early rapid growth followed by inevitable plateau. Humans are remarkably unexceptional in this regard. He turned back to the tactical display. What they lack in sophistication, they attempt to compensate for with boldness and numbers. Today, we remind them that neither is sufficient. Ryla inclined her head in deference, but did not step back. I have studied their historical records extensively, Governor. Humans respond to threats with disproportionate force. It is irrational. All the more reason to establish boundaries now, before their delusions of grandeur grow further. Vrax straightened to his full height, nearly 3 meters tall. Strike force status? All vessels report ready, Governor. Optimal formation achieved. Weapons charged. Stealth systems engaged. Vrax regarded the display one final time. 5 human outposts, approximately 20,000 colonists. A regrettable but necessary sacrifice to maintain galactic order. Commence Operation Deterrence. Standard precision protocols. The bridge fell silent as the orders were transmitted. The strike force, 12 Cthar warships, sleek and predatory, advanced through the nebula's swirling gases toward their targets. On the tactical display, Vrax watched the elegant choreography unfold. The Cthar military machine operating with the efficiency and precision built over millennia of martial tradition. The first outpost fell in under 3 minutes. The others followed in quick succession. The Cthar weapons, focused plasma beams and gravitational disruptors, cut through the civilian-grade shields with contemptuous ease. Habitation domes shattered, exposing their occupants to hard vacuum or toxic atmospheres. Mining facilities imploded. Research stations crumbled. Throughout it all, Vrax maintained a clinical detachment, noting with approval the minimal expenditure of energy and resources required to achieve their objective. Operation complete, Governor, reported the tactical officer. All targets neutralized. Strike Force reports 0 casualties. Minimal shield depletion. Estimated human casualties, 18,391. Vrax nodded with satisfaction. Precise and efficient. The Supreme Command will be pleased. He turned to face his communications officer. Record all. Sensor data for transmission to Central Archives. The historians should note this day, when humanity was reminded of its proper place in the cosmic order. As the bridge crew set about their duties with renewed vigor, Commander Ryla approached Vrax again, her voice lowered. Governor, I find it strange that we've detected no emergency transmissions from the human settlements. No distress calls. No pleas for assistance. Vrax dismissed her concern with a wave. Their communications infrastructure was among the first systems targeted. Standard protocol. Yes, but typically there are emergency beacons, automated systems that... Perhaps they failed to maintain such systems, Vrax interrupted. It would be consistent with their typically haphazard approach to colonization. He studied Ryla's expression, noting the subtle positioning of her sensory appendages that indicated continued unease. Your caution serves us well, Commander, but in this case, it's unwarranted. The humans will retreat, lick their wounds, and adjust their expansion policies accordingly. The natural order reasserts itself. Ryla inclined her head in the formal gesture of acquiescence, but Vrax noted the stiffness in her posture as she returned to her station. Let her worry, he thought. That was, after all, her function, to anticipate problems. His was to solve them. The view screen now showed real-time imagery of the destroyed outposts, shattered habitation domes, twisted metal frameworks, debris fields slowly expanding in the weightlessness of space. Fires, where atmosphere remained, burned with eerie silence. Vrax allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The message had been delivered. Order would be restored. He had, of course, drastically miscalculated. 3 weeks passed with a strange, unsettling silence from human space. The diplomatic channels, typically buzzing with messages ranging from formal protests to thinly veiled threats, remained dormant. The commercial communications networks, usually filled with the cacophony of human trade and cultural exchanges, carried only routine traffic, noticeably subdued. It was as if the species had collectively held its breath. Vrax paced the bridge of the Void Hammer, his agitation evident in the rapid clicking of his talons against the polished deck plates. Nothing? Still nothing from their government. The communications officer, visibly uncomfortable, confirmed, no official communications on any recognized diplomatic channels, Governor. However, he hesitated. Continue, Vrax ordered. Our monitoring stations have detected an unusual increase in encrypted transmissions across human territory. Military frequencies, civilian emergency channels, all carrying data packages with encryption protocols far beyond what we've previously documented from human systems. Vrax stopped his pacing. You're saying they've suddenly improved their encryption by several orders of magnitude? Yes, Governor. Our decryption algorithms have managed to extract only fragments. References to final preparations and something called Shadow Protocol. The context remains unclear. Commander Ryla, who had been silently monitoring her own console, looked up. Governor, I believe you should see this. She transferred data to the main view screen, displaying a series of long-range sensor readings. These energy fluctuations were detected emanating from Jupiter's moons in the human home system, as well as from similar gas giant satellites in 7 other colonized systems. Vrax studied the readings with growing unease. The energy signatures were massive, far larger than any human industrial or military installation should be capable of generating. A natural phenomenon, perhaps? Gas giant magnetospheric interactions can produce. The patterns are too regular, Governor. Precisely timed pulses with mathematical precision. And there's more. Ryla adjusted the display. Long-range sensors have detected multiple unidentified objects moving through deep space at near-relativistic speeds, utilizing some form of stealth technology we've never encountered before. They're practically invisible to standard detection methods. For the first time, Vrax felt a flutter of genuine concern. He masked it quickly, narrowing his vertical pupils. Rogue asteroids, perhaps, or a previously unknown cosmic phenomenon, or possibly a rival empire's technology. He was grasping, and he knew it. The bridge's atmosphere grew tense as officers exchanged uncertain glances. The Cthar did not tolerate uncertainty well. Their entire civilization was built on predictability and order. The communications officer suddenly straightened. "Governor, we're receiving a transmission. Omnidirectional, unencrypted, originating from..." He paused, checking his readings. "From near Jupiter in the human home system." "Display it," Vrax ordered, unconsciously adopting a more formal posture. The view screen shifted, but instead of the expected human face, it showed only a simple black background with a stylized emblem Vrax didn't recognize, a geometrically precise dragon coiled around a sword. A synthesized voice spoke in flawless High Cthar, the formal dialect used only in the Empire's most solemn pronouncements. To the Cthar Supreme Command, your actions in the Serpentis Nebula constituted a direct violation of the Vega Accords and resulted in the deaths of 18,391 souls. You have long referred to our kind as vermin. But even vermin have defense mechanisms when cornered. You have stirred the fire ant nest. Prepare to face the consequences. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Vrax was the first to recover. "Insolence," he snarled, the ridges on his spine flaring in anger. "They dare to threaten the Empire in our own tongue." He turned to his intelligence officer. "This reference to fire ants, what does it mean?" The officer quickly consulted the ship's database. "A Terran insect species, Governor. Small individually, but known to swarm in large numbers when their nests are disturbed. Their venom causes intense pain disproportionate to their size." A meaningless analogy, Vrax dismissed, though the unease in his gut had intensified. They seek to intimidate us with primitive metaphors while they prepare some desperate, doomed counterattack. He straightened, addressing the bridge. "Alert all border forces to prepare for possible human aggression. Increase surveillance of all known human military installations." As the crew rushed to comply, Commander Ryla approached him once more. "Governor, I advise caution. There are too many unknowns. The energy signatures we've detected, the unidentified objects, now this message. Something fundamental has changed." Vrax studied her for a long moment. Ryla had always been perceptive, sometimes disconcertingly so. It was why he valued her counsel, even when he chose to ignore it. "Your concern is noted, Commander, but the humans are bluffing. Their known military capabilities are generations behind ours. Whatever trick they're planning, we will be ready." He turned back to the view screen, now displaying the locations of Cthar border fleets, an imposing array of military might that had kept the Empire secure for millennia. Whatever the humans were planning, they would soon learn the cost of challenging the established order. The alert klaxons blared without warning, their harsh wailing cutting through the routine hum of the Voidhammer's bridge. Sensor officers frantically worked their stations as data poured in from the border fleets. "Multiple contacts appearing simultaneously across all border sectors," shouted the tactical officer, his composure cracking. They're everywhere." "Impossible," Vrax muttered, hurrying to the tactical display. What he saw there stopped him cold. The display showed hundreds, then thousands of massive objects materializing from what had appeared to be empty space. They seemed to phase into existence, as if stepping through invisible doorways from another reality. The objects, warships, Vrax realized with growing horror, were unlike any human vessel previously encountered. They were angular, predatory shapes of dull black material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Their hulls were marked with glowing energy ports that resembled nothing so much as the eyes of mythological beasts. The largest were immense, dwarfing even the Cthar dreadnoughts. "What are we seeing?" Vrax demanded, his voice barely steady. Where did they come from? How did they approach undetected? Commander Ryla was already analyzing the incoming data. Some form of advanced cloaking technology, Governor. Like nothing we've ever encountered. The energy signatures match what we detected earlier from the gas giants. I believe they've been staging there, building up power for this. Identification, Vrax asked, still struggling to process the scale of what he was witnessing. They're broadcasting IFF signals now, the communications officer reported. They identify as the Seoul Defense Force, SDF, a military entity we have no prior intelligence on. On the tactical display, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The SDF vessels had completely surrounded the Cathar border fleets, emerging in perfect formation, as if they had been invisibly positioned for hours or days before revealing themselves. The movements of the human vessels defied known physics. They accelerated and changed direction with impossible agility, as if mass and inertia were mere suggestions rather than laws. Status of border fleet? Vrax asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. They report total tactical surprise, Governor. The 2nd and 5th squadrons have opened fire, but the tactical officer paused, checking his readings. The human vessels appear to be equipped with some form of energy-absorbing shields. Our weapons are having minimal effect. Vrax watched in disbelief as the smaller SDF vessels, designated Wyverns by the tactical computer, broke formation and began executing complex maneuvers around the Cathar ships. They moved with precision that suggested either incredible pilot skill or, more likely, advanced autonomous systems. The larger SDF vessels maintained their positions, weapons ports glowing but silent. They're not firing, Ryla observed quietly. They could have launched a devastating first strike, but they're holding position. A psychological tactic, Vrax replied, trying to sound confident. They seek to intimidate us with this display. But even as he spoke, he knew it was working. The sheer scale and technological superiority on display was unlike anything the Cathar had faced in their long history. Ryla had moved to a secondary console, rapidly pulling data from the ship's intelligence archives. Governor, I've been correlating intelligence reports from the past 50 years. There have been indicators we missed or dismissed. She displayed a series of reports on resource extraction operations in extreme environments, white dwarf stars, neutron stars, even small black holes. Humans have been secretly harvesting exotic materials and energy at a scale that dwarfs our own production capacity. The industrial infrastructure required to build a fleet of this size and technological sophistication would be impossible to hide, Vrax finished for her. Unless they deliberately presented a false front to the galaxy, Ryla countered. The human colonies and outposts we've observed, their seemingly primitive ships, their chaotic diplomacy. What if it was all misdirection? A carefully constructed facade while they built this. She gestured at the tactical display, where the SDF fleet now completely encircled the Cathar border forces. The realization hit Vrax like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been a young, chaotic species stumbling into galactic politics. They had been preparing, building, waiting, and the Cathar, in their arrogance, had given them the perfect justification to reveal their true strength. Incoming transmission from a nearest SDF command vessel, announced the communications officer, his voice steady through sheer professionalism. Vrax straightened his posture, gathering what dignity he could. Display it. The view screen shifted to show a human male, elderly by their standards, with completely white hair cut short in what Vrax recognized as a military style. He wore a simple black uniform with minimal insignia, a stark contrast to the elaborate decorations Cathar officers favored. But it was the human's eyes that caught Vrax's attention, cold, calculating, and utterly without fear. I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Thorne, Supreme Commander of the Seoul Defense Force, the human stated without preamble, his voice deep and measured. You are Governor Zalter Vrax, Commander of the Cathar Lyran Military District, aboard the command vessel Voidhammer. The human's knowledge of his identity and position was unsettling. Cathar intelligence had believed their command structures were secure from human surveillance. I demand explanation for this unprovoked aggression against Cathar's sovereign territory, Vrax said, falling back on diplomatic protocol. Your fleet's presence constitutes an act of war. Admiral Thorne's expression remained impassive. The killing of 18,391 civilians was the act of war, Governor. This, he gestured to indicate the fleet surrounding them, is the consequence. Those outposts were illegal incursions into recognized Cathar buffer zones, Vrax countered. We acted within our rights to protect our borders. Let me tell you about the Sole Defense Force, Governor, since your intelligence on humanity is clearly inadequate. Thorne's tone remained conversational, almost academic. It was established after the devastating wars that nearly destroyed Earth, and after our first hostile contacts with alien civilizations. Our mandate is simple: to ensure the absolute security of human space by any means necessary. The Admiral leaned forward slightly. We are humanity's last wall. You try to tear it down. Vrax felt a cold dread settling in his bones, but maintained his composure. The Cathar Empire has ruled this sector for 12,000 years, Admiral. Your impressive display notwithstanding, if you force this conflict, you will face the full might of an empire spanning hundreds of worlds. I advise you to withdraw your forces immediately. For the first time, Thorne's expression changed, a slight, cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. Governor, you still don't understand. This isn't a preliminary force. This isn't a border skirmish. This is the full deployment of the SDF First Fleet. He paused, letting the words sink in. First Fleet, Governor. One of 12. Vrax heard gasps from several officers on the bridge. The implications were staggering. If what Thorne said was true, if this was merely 1/12 of humanity's military capacity, before Vrax could formulate a response, an urgent message from the Cathar Supreme Command flashed on his private channel. The message was brief and frantic. Hold position. Defend Empire at all costs. Reinforcements en route. The Supreme Command was panicking, Vrax realized. They were facing an adversary they hadn't prepared for, with capabilities they couldn't match. And in their fear, they were about to make a catastrophic mistake. Vrax opened the channel to Thorne again. Admiral, perhaps we could discuss terms for de-escalation. There is no need for further. Governor Vrax interrupted a harsh voice from behind him. A holographic projection of Grand Marshal Kextor, the supreme military commander of the Cathar Empire, had appeared on the bridge. You will not negotiate with these vermin. You will hold position until reinforcements arrive. Then you will eradicate this human infestation. Admiral Thorne, still visible on the main screen, watched the exchange with clinical interest. Your reinforcements won't arrive, Grand Marshal, he said calmly. SDF Fleets 3 through 7 have already secured the hyperspace corridors leading to this sector. And Fleets 8 through 12 are currently neutralizing your core military installations. Kextor's holographic image betrayed shock before quickly masking it. Impossible. Our core systems are the most heavily defended in the galaxy. Were, Thorne corrected gently. They were the most heavily defended. Rage contorted Kextor's features. Open fire. All vessels. Open fire immediately. Eradicate these human abominations. The order echoed across all Cathar communication channels. On the tactical display, Vrax watched in horror as the border fleet commanders, driven by training and obedience, complied. Energy weapons and gravitational disruptors lashed out at the SDF vessels. The humans didn't attempt to evade. The weapons impacted their shields, which rippled with blue-white energy but held firm. For a moment, there was silence. Then Admiral Thorne sighed, a sound of genuine regret. So be it. He made a simple hand gesture to someone off-screen. The SDF fleet responded with terrifying coordination. From a massive dreadnoughts came streams of blue-white energy. Not the familiar plasma weapons or laser systems used throughout the galaxy, but something new. The beams moved with unnatural precision, curving and adjusting their trajectories to pursue their targets. Where they struck Cathar vessels, they didn't merely damage, they annihilated. Shields collapsed instantly. Hull armor vaporized. Internal systems exploded. Dragon's breath, Commander Rilo whispered, horrified fascination in her voice. They've weaponized quantum entanglement. Those beams are transferring energy directly into the molecular bonds of our ships. Simultaneously, the smaller SDF vessels released swarms of what appeared to be autonomous drones. Millions of them, moving in coordinated patterns that overwhelmed the Cathar point defense systems. They targeted weapons emplacements, engines, sensor arrays, not to destroy the ships outright, but to cripple them with surgical precision. The Void Hammer shuddered violently as it took multiple hits. Vrax was thrown against a console, pain flaring across his side where the impact cracked his exoskeletal armor. Emergency lighting bathed the bridge in crimson as primary systems failed. Damage report, he shouted through the smoke and chaos. Primary weapons systems destroyed, came the stunned reply. Engine control offline. Shields at 12% and failing. They're targeting specific systems, Governor. They could destroy us completely, but they're choosing not to. On the tactical display, those Cathar vessels that remained functional were already retreating, their formation shattered. In less than 5 minutes, the pride of the Cathar border fleet had been reduced to burning wreckage and crippled hulks. Grand Marshal Kextor's holographic image flickered and distorted, his connection degrading. Fight to the last. Die with honor. The Empire will. His transmission cut off abruptly. Admiral Thorne's image, by contrast, remained crystal clear on the main view screen. Enough, he said simply, and the SDF vessels ceased fire simultaneously. The sudden silence was more terrifying than the battle had been. Vrax, bleeding from several wounds and struggling to stand, faced the human admiral with as much dignity as he could muster. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Governor Vrax," Thorne replied, his tone now formal. "I am authorized to present the terms under which the Sol Defense Force will refrain from the complete elimination of the Cathar Empire as a military and political entity. Not terms of surrender," Vrax noted. "Terms for continued existence." The distinction was both subtle and devastating. Thorne proceeded to list the conditions. 1. Immediate and complete withdrawal of all Cathar military and civilian assets from the Serpentis Nebula and all other contested regions bordering human space. 2. Demilitarization of your border fleets and acceptance of SDF monitoring stations within those sectors for a period of 50 standard cycles. 3. War reparations in the form of resources and non-military technology to rebuild the destroyed outposts and compensate the families of the victims. 4. The surrender of all members of the Cathar Supreme Command who authorized the initial attack to face justice before a joint tribunal. The Admiral's eyes hardened. "These are not negotiations, Governor. This is the only opportunity for the Cathar Empire to continue to exist." Vrax steadied himself against a console, acutely aware of the eyes of his surviving bridge crew upon him. The terms were humiliating, an acknowledgement of complete defeat, the end of Cathar's supremacy in this sector of the galaxy. But the alternative? "You claim to have neutralized our core military installations," Vrax said, playing for time. "Yet the Empire spans hundreds of worlds. Our reserves alone could sustain warfare for decades." "Could they?" Thorne asked mildly. "Our intelligence suggests otherwise. Your empire has been stagnant for centuries, Governor. Your technological development plateaued. Your military doctrine calcified. You've been coasting on past glories and intimidation." He sighed. "We could have coexisted peacefully. We were prepared to, until you mistook our restraint for weakness." A side channel opened on Vrax's personal communicator, a priority transmission from Ryla, who had moved to a functional communication station. The message was terse, confirmed reports coming in. Core military bases across the Empire under simultaneous attack. Heavy casualties. Supreme Command in disarray. Vrax closed his eyes briefly, weighing his options. Protocol demanded he fight to the last, dying with honor rather than accepting such terms. But such a death would be meaningless, and would likely doom his species to extinction, given the power disparity now revealed. "I accept your terms," he said finally, ignoring the gasps and hisses of shock from the surviving Cathar officers. "Under the emergency powers granted to me as theater commander, I accept on behalf of the Cathar Empire." Admiral Thorne nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement rather than celebration. "Wise decision, Governor. Medical assistance will be provided to your wounded. SDF vessels will escort your surviving ships back to your territory. A formal treaty will be prepared for signing within 1 standard week." The transmission ended, leaving Vrax facing the stunned silence of his bridge crew. Some looked at him with undisguised contempt. He had violated the warrior code that formed the backbone of Cathar society. Others showed only relief, understanding how close they had come to annihilation. Commander Ryla approached, her movements stiff from injuries sustained during the battle. "You saved our species today," she said quietly. "By surrendering?" Vrax asked bitterly. "By recognizing reality." She gestured to the tactical display, where the SDF vessels maintained their perfect formation around the shattered Cathar fleet. "They could have destroyed us completely. They chose not to. They're not conquerors," Vrax realized aloud. "They're defenders. They built this incredible military machine, not to expand, not to rule, but to ensure they would never be threatened again." He laughed, a hollow sound, "and we gave them justification to reveal it." The hours that followed were a blur of damage control, casualty reports, and the grim logistics of retreat. The surviving Cathar vessels, many barely capable of maintaining life support, formed a ragged convoy escorted by the silent, imposing presence of SDF warships. No further communication came from Admiral Thorne or any human representative. They simply watched, weapons primed but silent, ensuring compliance. As the Void Hammer limped toward the new boundary that would separate Cathar space from human territory, Vrax stood on his partially repaired bridge, watching the stars. The task ahead was monumental. He would have to convey the truth to the Empire, face the political chaos that would surely follow, and somehow guide his people through the painful transition from perceived galactic dominance to strategic irrelevance. Commander Ryla joined him at the view screen. "The Supreme Command has gone silent," she reported. "No further instructions. I believe they're preparing for internal power struggles. Let them fight over the scraps of their pride," Vrax said wearily. "We have more important matters to attend to. The reconstruction of our society. The acceptance of our new reality." "And what reality is that, Governor?" Vrax gestured toward the receding SDF vessels, their black holes nearly invisible against the void, betrayed only by the eerie glow of their energy ports. "That we are not, and perhaps never were, the apex predators we believed ourselves to be. That there are dragons among the stars, Commander, and we were fool enough to wake them." A massive SDF dreadnought slowly turned away, its silhouette briefly eclipsing a distant star before seeming to fade into the darkness. "Not gone," Vrax knew. "Just watching. Always watching. Peace has been restored," he said softly, "but at a price the Cathar Empire will be paying for generations to come."